Right trusty and well-beloved brother, right worshipful fathers in God, and trusty and well-beloved, forasmuch as we know well your desire were to hear joyful tidings of our good speed, we signify unto you that of our labour has sent good conclusion.
In the early 15th century, Henry was campaigning around northern France, winning French territory in famous battles, especially at Agincourt. It seems a small thing, but it was of quite extraordinary significance that after his victory, Henry V broke with 350 years of royal tradition and wrote his dispatches home in English. This was an astute move. English kings had begun to speak English under his father, Henry IV, but all court documents had hitherto been written in French, as they had been since the Norman conquest. Henry's English letters are deliberate pieces of propaganda to be spread throughout the land. Here's his letter announcing peace.
Upon Monday, the 20th day of May, we arrived in this town, Troyes, and the accord of the Peace Perpetuelle was here sworn by the Duke of Burgundy and semblably by us in our own name. The letters forthwith sealed under the Great Seal, copies of which we send to be proclaimed in our city of London, and through all our realm, that our people may have knowledge thereof for their consolation. Signed, Henry, by the grace of God, King of England.
Henry's motives may have been the exploitation of anti-French fervour, but once he returned from the campaigns, he continued to write in English. And in doing so, he made the first major step towards the creation of an official, standardised English that everybody could read. The Houses of Parliament, where I am now, are also called the Palace of Westminster. That's a reminder that on this site, the kings of England once had their principal London residence. This hall is all that survived the Great Fire, and somewhere round here, when the king was in residence, would have been the first circle of his government.
This was called the Signet Office. It wrote personal letters on behalf of the monarch, which carried the royal seal, and, in ways familiar to us today, once Henry decreed that the Signet Office should use English, it was inevitable that the rest of the country would come to do the same.
The problem was, which English? Across the country, people still spoke a mass of different dialects and would have had trouble understanding one another. For instance, the word stien or stain in the north was stone in the south. The ing participle, as in running, was said as and in the north, end in the East Midlands, and ind in the West Midlands. So, running could also be said as runand, runind, and runend. But that was nothing compared to the variety of spellings in use. Because England had traditionally used French or Latin as its written languages, there had never been any need to agree on a common linguistic standard or even how to spell particular words. But now, there was.
Take the word church, for instance, one of the most common and important in the language. In the north of England, it was commonly called a kirk, while the south used church. However, kirk could be spelt K-Y-R-K, K-Y-R-K-E, K-I-R-K-E, K-E-R-K, K-I-R-C, and K-E-R-K-E. Church was variously C-H-U-R-C-H-E, C-H-E-R-C-H-E, C-H-I-R-C-H-E, C-H-E-R-C-H, C-H-Y-R-C-H, C-H-E-R-G-E, C-H-Y-R-C-H-E, and S-C-H-Y-R-C-H-E.
Fortunately, from the language's point of view, there was a big engine of state that could deal with this unruly tongue. It was the Chancellery, reduced to Chancery, the civil service of the day, because it was crucial that a document produced in London could be read in Carlisle. We needed a common written language.
This is the Public Records Office, where the official documents of the 15th century are kept. As Chancery began to use the English language, it had to make hundreds of decisions about which form of a word and which spelling to adopt. We don't know how these choices were made, but we do know that they stuck. Thousands of documents were painstakingly written out and sent all over the country. Many had legal status, so they had to be exact and consistent. And under the influence of Chancery, the language starts to look more modern. and more even. Words like any, but, many, not, such, ought, and even I, previously Ike, I-C-H-E, had also been allowed, find their modern forms at Chancery. Lond becomes land, and church, kirk, and all the others become church. During the decade 1469 to 1479 alone, for instance, the modern word shall starts as xal, then shall, and finally settles into its modern form, shall. The word writhe becomes right, hath and doth become has and does. By 1500, under the influence of Chancery, the language is becoming recognisable to us.
Is there anything else in common with the plurals? Some end in S, some end in ES, some end in IES. Anyone know why? Is there a reason why they all end in different endings?
Is it because it's just the English language?
It's just the English language. That's a very good answer. Okay.
But just because everyone began to spell the same way, it didn't mean the language became any more logical. Look at this. Why English is so hard. We'll begin with the box, and the plural is boxes. But the plural of ox is oxen, not oxes. Then one fowl is goose, but two are called geese.
Yet the plural of moose should never be meese.
You may find a lone mouse or a whole load of mice, but the plural of house is houses, not heis. If the plural of man
Is always called men.
then why shouldn't the plural of pan be called pen? And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on.
What's the poet trying to tell us?
English is confusing.
That English is confusing. Hands up if you agree with Ola. Okay, hands down.
Ask any foreigner, in fact ask any pupil about mastering English spelling and its inconsistencies, and they'll say, what have we done to deserve this? A lot of it is just to do with the mongrel nature of English, and a lot of it is to do with accidents of usage from centuries ago. But some of it was deliberate.
Hands up if you think that English is so hard to learn.
Around the time English was being standardised by Chancery, there was much debate about the best way to spell things. Broadly, there were reformers who wanted to spell words according to the way they were pronounced, and traditionalists who wanted to spell them in one of the ways they'd always been.
When it's something like anchor,
Yeah.
you don't know if it's a H or a K.
The traditionalists won.
It is confusing. How are you going to know? Because the silent letter is silent.
They couldn't help tampering, though. In a desire to make the roots of the language more evident, words that had entered English from French, for instance, were given a Latin look. The letter B was inserted into debt and doubt. The letter C into victuals. Words that were thought to be of Greek origin sometimes had their spelling adjusted, so that throne and theatre acquired their H. Rhyme, on the other hand, was given an H just because rhythm had one, even though it's etymologically absurd. On a similar principle, an L was inserted in could because it had become silent, but it was still present in should and would. The same with H in words like whole, were and welk. And like anybody who tries to rationalise English, they really messed it up.
You feel confused. And who do you blame? Me. Okay. Let's carry on. Let's have another look at the second verse, okay?
The cow is a plural, making cows or kine. But the plural of vow is vows, not vine. And I speak of foot, and you show me your feet. But I give you a boot, would a pair equal feet?
Stay here, be on television, divide it each way, okay? Right. You can all stand there. They've got the point, let's go. As if to prove the folly of trying to bring reason into the language, the English promptly decided to pronounce everything differently anyway. Around this time, and nobody really knows why, a sea change took place in the way English sounds. This is called the Great Vowel Shift, and it happened comparatively quickly. We think over a generation or two. Before it, English was pronounced in a way that sounds foreign to us now. Might used to sound rather like today's meat, which in turn was said something like mit. So the sentence, I might go and buy some meat, once sounded like, I meet, go and buy some mit. That was the Great Vowel Shift. It made 15th century English recognisable to the modern ear, but it didn't change the spelling.